And we're live. Good evening and welcome to the stream. Nice to see everybody in the studio this evening. Hope everybody's feeling great for a Saturday afternoon. And tonight we're doing something completely different. Well, we're continuing with something completely different. Last night we finished the quadcopter and it's been test flown today, but more about that later. Tonight we're going to carry on with this scraper board, which actually means I've forgotten to get my tools out. So before I put my white gloves on and get them all dirty, I shall just dig out my tools. Which is a good job they're to hand. So, what am I going to need? Probably that one, and that one. Those we'll just tuck over there. We shall now put my white gloves back on. So, as a few people have mentioned, I've gone all CSI. Okay, now the sharp scraping tool. Anybody who's on stream, new to the studio, doesn't know what this is. This is Scraperboard. It's a clay-based material, pressed and rolled onto a cardboard back, and then coated with Indian ink to create this black effect. And I need to adjust my lighting a little bit. See if I can get rid of the reflection for you and get rid of the reflection for me. That may need... Let's try that. We'll see how that goes. Hopefully that's okay for you. And... I'm gradually watching this light going back to where it was a moment ago. Let's tighten up the connector if I can. There we go. This is interesting. Well, we shall have to compromise. I need to be able to see what I'm doing, and you need to be able to see what I'm doing, but unfortunately what we're getting reflection from the big heavy light just above me. Ooh. I may have to revert to using a different light. Bit of experimentation needed here. If I do the well, at least you got a very bright looking light in there. I can tell the camera needs to be where I am, but I can't work around a tripod. Interesting. This is going to be challenging. I think I may have to resort to a bigger light. There we go. That's better. Hopefully that's okay for you guys on stream. Sorry about the messing around, but I've got quite a bright light here, and that was reflecting. No matter where I put it, it was either reflecting off this to me and I couldn't see what I was looking at, or it was reflecting off this to you and you couldn't see what you were looking at. and that's because the camera is opposite me. I'm sat this way and the camera's there, and you're looking at this sort of upside down. And ideally I need the camera at the same side of me, then I can position the light so that we can both see. We're doing something about that next week. I'm waiting for a part to be delivered, and hopefully then won't have that problem. But in the meantime, whilst I'm doing Scraperboard, I will have to use my big uplighter to the left of me, which means it may get rather warm in here. But anyway, anybody that's new to the stream, welcome. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, whatever the time is local to yourself, and welcome to my studio. What I'm doing here is attempting to recreate my version of Earthrise. You can see a reference picture of what Earthrise is just down to the left there, and this is how I started it just before my when was it? It would have been on Tuesday I started this, and then on Wednesday, Thursday and Friday we were streaming the creation of a quadcopter. Nodalchin, I believe that looks like. Hello, good evening and welcome. Thank you for joining the stream this evening, and how are you? What I want to do, I think, is I've got a rough outline which actually doesn't look too bad, but what I want to do is start to add some more detail now into this moon, including some craters. So we actually add some texture into the moon. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do it, but we shall just do it and see what happens. And we're going to want, it's going to be about here, I think. Yeah. Just outlining roughly a crater edge that's probably a bit too round. But whether it's a bit too round or not, that's what it is now. We will deal with it, we will work with it, and we'll see if we need to adjust it afterwards. We've got, I think I'm looking at a couple of reference pictures or three, and just sort of looking roughly how craters and things look. Yeah, they've been around for quite a long time, Nuddlechin. This one was just a blank board. There was no pre-printed picture on it, which I assume is probably the one that you did when it was a kid, which allows me basically to choose any image I like. I've already done. This is my second ever picture. I've never done Scraperboard before, except for one picture before this, which was my very first one, which we did on stream, which was a portrait of somebody on stage. So do you remember what the picture was? They seem to like a lot of things like animals with the fur when in the pre-printed stuff that you see. Certainly in the craft shops and things like that. But I've never done. I actually do have a kit, but I've never done one, and so I've never had the read the instruction leaflet, shall we say? So this is. All of this is kind of brand new to me. I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. I'm just doing something that looks as though it ought to be okay. and whether it works out or not, I'm not quite sure. It will be interesting. Yeah, that's a bit too round. So it's out of perspective a little bit, but never mind. I'll just keep playing with it until I get something I like. Okay, yeah, they do like animals. They tend to like cats, horses, and lions for some reason. I think it's obviously because of the long, sort of long hair and manes and things like that. I don't know quite why cats. Mainly, I guess, because everybody loves cats, by which I mean everybody that loves cats and loves dogs, or those people that prefer dogs. You know what I mean. Ah dear, just cats is big business. No idea actually how to make the moon's surface look like the moon's surface. It kinda does anyway when you look at this from a distance, but we just need to continue to make it look as though it's on the moon, or a moon, given that that doesn't particularly look like the Earth. It just looks like some sort of planet. Didn't actually want to do that, but I've never mind, it's done now. Also, I think, yeah. I don't know what it is about. You see that you. Okay, I was about to say you see all. You don't see them all over the place. But when I've seen scraperboards, it's always been sort of those three animals. It doesn't tend to be things, like an owl or I don't know, a snail or just something. It's the cats and the horses, the odd dog I've seen, but then it's the lion. Yeah. Still, did you enjoy it? And Chris, see what happens. Good afternoon. Every time, yeah, and I wasn't even doing art yesterday. I was building a helicopter. So when you were the time I did this, just before I did the, what did I do last? I finished off the cat in pyrography. Just before that I was doing a scraperboard in and I did a portrait in it, Chris. Oh, you watched the helicopters. I see, you were sat there lurking and not saying anything. Anybody who's in stream, this guy, see what happens, is an amazing modeler. He makes sculptures, models out of pipe cleaners. Okay, yeah. By models, I don't mean little tiny things. I mean sort of 6 foot high giraffes, and a sort of a 5 foot high model of Mega Man is currently what he's doing now. So check him out when see what happens there is streaming. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, a pipe cleaner, if you're not familiar with it, it's a piece of wire with sort of bristles, for want of a better description, but it's extremely floppy. It won't even hold its own weight, except the way that Chris moulds them together and it stands up. A 5 foot giraffe. I was comparing the two quadcopters. I've flown the littler one that you saw, the one I was building today, and I wasn't fantastically impressed. I much prefer my bigger one. So that's going to be my that's going to continue to be my favourite copter. Hope your family's doing well, Chris. I think it was your grandfather was a little ill last time. Yeah. There's kind of yeah. The trouble is, the bigger they get, the more intimidating they get. But of those two quadcopters, the bigger one, I certainly find the bigger one a heck of a lot more stable. When I start talking about the big single rotors, my middle-sized one is my favourite. In that one, it flies a lot better. And just Jessup, good evening. What are we up to? Well, we don't quite know what you're up to, but I'm doing some scraperboard. Oh, I'm glad he's doing well, Chris. That's fantastic to know. This is Scraperboard, just Jessup. I don't think you were around when I last did one. I think you sort of just dropped into the streams when I was building the helicopter, which of course we finished last night and did some test flying of it today. I suspect there'll be a fair few people come on to see what happened with that. So a little bit later on, I've got a long video which I'll cut short, but of just showing how it flew, and I'll talk more about it then. In the meantime, I am trying to work out how to make craters look like craters. And basically I have no idea, so I'm kind of just messing around. Let's have some sort of ridge over here as well. Oh, there is one on the reference image. Yeah. Just odd bits of moon surface which are reflecting light. We're probably actually going to, well, we're almost certainly going to finish this scraperboard this evening, which means that tomorrow, for tomorrow evening's stream, I'll actually move on to doing some carving. Now, at this moment in time, I draw an alien in there. Daft as it sounds, Chris, 3D, of course, has been doing the xenomorph in black and white. I've kind of half been wondering whether to ask him politely if I can copy his image and try and do it on Scraperboard as well, just to do the same image but see how it comes out in Scraperboard, because of course that's a monochrome image just the same. But you mean you can't see the alien that's in here? Of course. You mean you don't forget? Is it alien or predator which can go invisible? So he's definitely in there. Of course, you wouldn't find him until you got a bit close, but there you go. No, I don't think he would. I know he's using a reference image as well. It might just be an interesting thing to actually do, to be honest. Again, it's one of those things I've no idea how I'd go about doing it, but that's part of the fun, really. But as I was about to say, I should be doing some carving tomorrow, relief carving. So if anybody's got any ideas of what might be a good subject for relief carving, I'd be interested, because I've been trying to think about it for a couple of days now, and I mean there's sort of the various obvious things like flowers and stuff like that, but what I've got is just a a block of wood here. It's what, about an inch thick, so you know, we don't have, we've got about 3/4 of an inch of what would be called relief space that we can carve, so something to go on there. So you know, I'll keep mentioning it throughout the stream, but if anybody's got any ideas, then you know, by all means let me know. You may see your idea come to life on the stream. I'm already thinking I like this better before I started trying to do these, trying to get some of this smooth surface cratering and things in. But it will always go into the round portfolio if it turns out to be that bad. Anybody that's not particularly familiar with this as an art form, yeah, it's a black and white art form, or it is in this, as it is here. You can use ink to colour the you know, where the white's showing. You can use ink and use coloured ink, and I can have blues and greens and whatever colour I like. But essentially, it's a black and white, and you create the whiter tones by scraping more of the surface away, and so that's why this area looks lighter, because I scraped more of the surface away. And you can adjust that. I'm using a very fine sharp object here. If I use a blunter one, I'll create more solid lines, and they'll stand out even more. And it's proving to be an interesting technique. It's proving to be quite a difficult one to sort of master in order to get something that looks realistic. And this moon surface is probably going to be the most challenging of that, because the moon surface, of course, is just really solid, really grey, and very little to distinguish it. But then you've got these patches of white, which is just obviously the reflected sunlight. Okay, they're working, are they, Chris? It's a bit difficult to tell for me, because I'm seeing the individual scratches, and it's the sort of picture that you need to get back about, you know, 5 feet in reality to look at, but the camera is sort of giving you that perspective. So have you got your phone upside down again, by the way? Because I've turned the camera upside down effectively. Some people were kind of getting confused by a backwards image. Let's try and put another crater on the side of this one. Let's make it look like one's interacted with the other. So they've got up one morning and said, "Hello, crater." Yeah, not got that quite of interaction, but it's kind of weird to think that the indentation of the crater could be millions of years old and was formed by something hitting this surface with tremendous force, which has just blown all the material out of the middle. That's a bit not this time. That was for the low level carving, wasn't it? And yeah, it looks better. It looked better when I didn't reverse the image. Amazingly, this tool that I'm using has got quite a sharp point on it. but it's amazing how quickly, effectively it appears to blunt, and I keep having to turn it over and use the other side. And all I'm doing is scraping ink off of like a china clay. So sunlight is sort of, well, sunlight you can tell from the earth is sort of up in this direction here. So that's giving me some indication of where the reflections are going to be more from, and where the bright spots are going to be. I seem to have a preferred technique of using lots of little tiny scratches. It seems to work better for me than using some of the other tools, which would create sort of thicker blocks of lines. Let's put one just off the bottom of the picture here as well. That's lucky, not so bad. I think I need something up here around the base of what looks to be a slight sort of hill. I'm not actually sure, Chris, to be honest with this. I mean, it's a bit like, you know, newsprint with the dots and what have you. I guess to find the dots, in theory, you can get a better resolution picture, but it seems to be more. Well, I mean, it's at this moment in time, I guess. It's not as bright. I mean, if I take a different tool which looks more like a knife blade, and I do this, then I start taking off fairly large, wide, solid colour. So I'm not necessarily sure. I think it's probably just it doesn't stand out as white. It's just increases the light level a little bit at the moment. And this still doesn't look the right shape. It's kind of I'm looking too far down on it. I'm still looking at an angle, which is kind of what I'm doing here. This one is more of a top-down look. It's too round. So I may have to, I don't know, do something to sort of just disturb that. Perhaps put another crater or something over just this edge here. Just to disguise the fact that it's as round as it is. Kind of wondering if I can do this like I'd do a pencil. But without using a pencil. So I can get like curved lines in there. Tillybug, good evening. Welcome to the studio this evening, and how are you doing? What's that program from, friends? Well, no, I can't do it. I can't imitate him. How are you doing? How are you all doing? Now then, unusually, of course, I guess, for a picture of the horizon, the moon has a really sharp horizon line. Because it's no atmosphere, which is part of the reason, and the other reason it's a lot closer. So whilst normally I'd look to sort of fade out horizon, I'm kind of wanting to, it's making me want to make it more defined and definite. Thank you very much, Tilly. It's kind of you to say so. I think, of course, as usual, I'm making a mess of it, but it's the finished result that matters. Let's see if we can just make the horizon line look a little bit more solid and prominent. Without looking like we've outlined it with a dirty great big marker. I think we probably actually want to bring the whole contrast level of this up a little bit so that the marks are a lot closer together and it just looks generally a bit brighter. It sort of feels like that's the right thing to do. And I only say feels because I don't actually know what I'm doing. This is learning on the job, as they say. If anybody's joined the studio tonight looking or wanting to know about the helicopter, which we finished last night on the stream, it has been test flown today and trimmed out, and I've got some video of that which I can show a little bit later on. But I will say at this stage I'm not fantastically impressed by it. In fact, I'm probably better described by I'm a little bit disappointed by it, at least at this stage. More work to be done in setting it up, I think, before we make a final sort of declaration on what I personally think of it. But there again, I'm not an expert flyer, so that does have to be taken into consideration. Yeah, I went until about 10:30 UK time, Tilly, which is about half an hour longer. I spent most of the stream, of course, talking, as you're aware, and not doing. And so the last thing to be done was to put the rotor blades on. So it sort of went on longer than normal to do that, and then essentially, apart from I think I spun the blades just to prove that everything worked, and then that was it. But and in about another 5-10 minutes I can show the video and then talk a bit more about that one. Anyway, what's everybody else been doing today? Has anybody been doing art or crafts or anything like that, or you just enjoyed the day, or enjoying the day watching videos and things? I spent half a day gardening. Not necessarily my most favourite pursuit or pastime, but unfortunately something that needs to be done. I kind of would much rather have been and done a stream, but you know what, it wasn't possible today. I'm just going to add sort of areas, you know, like I've just done there, just random, more or less highlights, I suppose, or brighter areas, and then see how it starts to look. It seems to be defining a surface quite well in using this sort of very fine scratching. It seems like I can probably, you know, just create like ridges and areas of undulation in the surface just by these sort of random scratches, without actually sort of going really deep or really bold in colour. Oh well, yeah, that's the problem with streaming in time zones. It's kind of hard to judge. That puts you what, about, I was about to say 12 hours behind, but you're Canadian, I think, aren't you, Chris? See what happens. And I didn't think, well, of course it's Saturday, nobody said you to get up early. Neither did I. I got up about 9 hours ago. So I'm guessing you had a relaxing morning, shall we say, before you actually got up. That looks like a really big area without anything in it. Let's see if we can just make it look a little bit less there. Oh, that looks not bad. It never ceases to amaze me that just a few scratches like that can completely, well, but it doesn't look bright white or anything, and it just completely changes how something looks. I'm watching my own preview and what I'm sending and what I'm receiving, and I'm getting a better view of this picture that way than I am actually looking down at it myself. So it's a bit like using a graphics tablet, having to do hand-eye coordination at a distance. America, North Carolina. Oh, okay, I'm completely wrong. Bug, you ought to do some crocheting on stream. I mean, nobody that I've seen has. Oh, I've seen one person doing some crocheting on stream, so that would be an unusual thing to see done on stream. I don't particularly want to go out and try and either find my needles or buy any new ones, so I say needles. I know it's a crochet hook, but you know, you might get a unique art form for people to see on stream. So just to whilst people are still around, if there's anybody that's new that's joined, tomorrow evening I'm probably going to be doing some relief carving onto a block of wood about 8 inches by 6 inches, and if anybody's got any particular ideas that sound interesting that they might like to see, let me know, and you never know, it might be an idea that I take up and do. It's an interesting one, Tilly, as to whether or not it literally doesn't. It doesn't fantastically bother me as to whether it would be grain related or whether it would be christening shawl. It's the physical art which is interesting to watch. The physical craft, and I guess I know, essentially there's not a lot of difference other than sort of the colours and things that you might be using, or the different formations you create. But yeah, it'd be interesting. I mean, I've never actually seen anybody do something particularly to a theme like game. I mean, as you say, the christening shawls or table doilies or that sort of thing. Edging for dresses and things like that, but no, it sounds like it could be interesting to see somebody do game related stuff. I want something a bit more on this Earth or this planet. There's something about it. Doesn't quite look as though it's really got a lot of cloud on it. Indeed. But they are quite easy to do, aren't they? That's crocheting doilies, by the way. There's as Tilly Bug said there. It's when you get carried away and it turns from a doily, or it turns from a mug. What do you call them? What do you call the things? Little square things you put glasses on. But it's like a cup protector or something, and you get carried away without realising it becomes it becomes sort of a plate size, but then it becomes a doily, then it becomes a tablecloth. Coaster, thank you, that's the word I was looking for. Dear. Many a time I just got carried away a long time ago now, but got carried away doing some coasters, and it's ended up as they've ended up big enough to sew 4 or 5 of them together and get something that's the size of a tablecloth. Extremely large coasters they were in the end. that's kind of got a lighter area in the middle here, and this off to the side here seems a little bit dark, but that kind of looks interesting. I mean, it's not realistic, and it's not like any of the reference images, which is fairly light, you know, similar brightness all the way across. But just this sort of dark area kind of looks really interesting. And I wonder, that looks better. I've just made this a bit deeper, and to the way I'm looking at it, because I've made this face a bit deeper here, this now looks more oval, or as though, you know, this is a ridge that the meteor has struck, and this is a lower level. You know, it's like you were going uphill, and therefore it would have a rounder shape, and it actually looks a bit better. Yes, Costa turned into a table mat. That sort of thing happens. It happens to me when I'm watching a particular interesting program on television, and I'm sort of concentrating on what I'm doing, but I'm not really concentrating. You've got the pattern in your head, and you're just doing it and just going round and round and round, and all of a sudden. Because I'm doing a round coaster rather than a square one, but just you suddenly look down and it's sort of dinner plate sized, and there we go. Let's enhance that, making that look a little bit more as though it's going upwards. I do enjoy this as an art form. Very daunting one to do, I think, when you look at a blank canvas like this, and you know that every single mark you make is visible, you know, because it's white on black. And I know you can take black ink or black Indian ink and you can put it over the top and effectively erase your marks, but there's still something about making what is effectively an indelible mark on the canvas. And something somewhat similar to taking a pen or a marker and going straight onto white paper, where you've just got white paper, and there's no way with a black ink pen of erasing that mark that you've just made. There's something makes it really hard to start and really hard to know just how to do things. It's kind of afraid isn't quite the word I'm looking for, but an extreme reluctance, shall we say, sometimes I find to actually, just going in almost and trying things. I mean, that's really what I'm doing here. Is I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just trying things out, and it seems to be working, and that obviously is encouraging. But it's still, when I did the portrait that I did, that was extremely daunting. When I got the outside in, and then there's a whole middle to fill in, and it's especially when it's looking good, and you don't want to spoil it, and then it becomes harder and harder to make marks. I generally want to brighten the whole surface up a bit. Oh, that's why. I thought I was making sort of slightly deeper marks than normal. I was using a different tool. I was using one with a that's not quite as sharp, and therefore it makes wider and deeper marks. I'm going to leave this area around here somewhat, slightly darker. It's got a nice sort of, I don't know, I kind of want to use words like mysterious look. It's not quite well lit, and you're not quite. It's kind of hinting at stuff that's off the side, off to one side, which you can't quite see. There's a dark area, and if you like whilst we've got Earthrise there, we've kind of got the sun coming across the moon like this, and this is in shadow at the moment. It's not quite lit. That feels like a nice sort of story to tell with the picture. So what I'm going to do is just enhance along this line a little bit here, and possibly down corresponding line down here, just so we get that impression of a shadow on this side. You guys have to tell me if that's actually what's coming across to you as well out there. Does it look as I'm describing it to you? Or are you seeing something different in it? Okay, have a little rest for a bit. I said I'd tell those of you that were on stream last night. Take my gloves off. What happened when I test flew this helicopter here, this quad-rotor helicopter. This is what we finished on the stream last night in this configuration, and as I said then, if the weather was reasonably well today, I'd test fly it. Well, it was okay. There's a little bit of a breeze, but not too bad. And as I've mentioned, I'm not fantastically well pleased with it. I will come back to the scraperboarding a little bit. A couple of things I've found that I don't fantastically like. That was one of them. As you notice there, the battery just slid out. And you know, the manufacturer's way of keeping this in was essentially to jam it in using a piece of foam, and that didn't really work that well. It did tend to slide about and almost slid out a couple of times whilst it was being flown. That actually feels tighter in the top, but it did slide about at least a couple of times, and when it slid out about halfway, it tended to unbalance this anyway. The other thing that I found a bit disconcerting is when and you'll see it on the video in a minute, when you start this up, the blades start up individually, and I'm not altogether sure whether that's the source of some problems that I've had since then with it. But you know, the battery sliding about was not a great thing to have happen. But I'll do is I will show you a video of me. Let me just turn the sound down a little bit on this video because it's loud. And let's bring it on stream so you can see. There we go. Now at this point, this model, I've just laid it down on the ground. It's never yet been flown, so you're about to see what happens with it. So I've got a cameraman with me, so the cameraman's doing their best to keep this in shot, and I'm doing my best to keep it stable, to keep it in shot. And that's the very first takeoff, and as you can see, it's quite unstable, and I'm working really hard at that point to stop the thing just tipping over. And as you can see, it's still really unstable. And at this point, I'm getting a feel for what the sticks are doing, just what controls I need to keep in all the time. And I am finding that that's trying to rotate anti-clockwise all the time. And and that is one thing I found throughout this video and the time that I was doing this, that the trim, which is this is the beeping you can hear in the background. What I'm doing is I'm applying minor corrections to the transmitter. It's what's called trimming, or applying trim, which is like an offset to the control sticks, so that I don't actually have to hold that control off center. And I'm still trying really hard there. It's still rotating, but at this stage it's manageable, and I'm now trying to trim the other 4 directions. And whilst I'm doing that, it's tending to go up and down a lot, just because you're trying to concentrate on a lot of things at the same time. And I've found that, well, certainly if this had been a model aircraft, I'd have been landing it and looking for problems with the controls, because the trims are so far out. The amount of trim that I put in ultimately after about 10 minutes to get this thing to be stable is far outside of what I would normally be comfortable with on a model aircraft, where I'm using real servos as opposed to electronic control, which I'm using here. But unfortunately with this there's no other way of doing it, so it's kind of, I have to put up with it. What I may actually do is tomorrow or on another fine day is completely factory default the controller on there and start again and take another look at it, because I'm not fantastically happy with the fact that the 4 motors start up individually. It could be because they're using it to lessen the load, but I actually think it's because the 4 speed controllers aren't actually in proper sync with each other. But here I am, I'm still trying to trim it. In fact, the battery lasts about 17 minutes, and when I get to the end of it, I'm just about comfortable with it's near. But as you can see, it's still all over the place. And one of the things I was really hoping with this is it would be a super stable platform, which my wife would be able to fly, but there's no way I'd even contemplate giving her the sticks at this point. I'm working really hard to keep that thing as stable as it is. And you might wonder why I'm continuously stopping and starting it, or landing and starting it. Basically because with a helicopter especially, you're continuously moving both sticks in all directions, and trying to take your fingers off of those sticks to move the trims, which are off to one side, means you lose control. And I haven't, as I say, I haven't got that thing stable enough to be able to do that at this stage. And if I'd have tried, it would have just flipped, as you've seen it do once or twice now already. And the beeping you can hear is me actually adjusting all those trims. Shall we say at this stage it's a lot more harder work, William, to get it to fly comfortably than I would normally expect. It's a little unfair to say it's not good at this stage, because it's not trimmed. Once it's fully trimmed, it might be the most wonderful platform, but it's that which you've got to get to that stage. And this is one of the reasons why is, if you like, it's not this or most flying quadcopters as opposed to drones are not great for beginners, because I know how to fly these things. I know how to fly helicopters. Not the best by any means, but it took quite a lot of work to keep that in the air. And if you've never flown that before, you wouldn't know for a start whether it was meant to do what it was doing and you were doing it wrong. Yeah, certainly it's not a great one for an absolute beginner. My bigger quad I trimmed that on its first lift off. That and then it flew stable after there. So that's just the difference. Hello then, Free. Well, now you've got an idea of some of this is a quad, and I'm trimming the quad. An actual helicopter to trim is somewhat harder than this. Same idea, but somewhat harder than this. So, and welcome to 3D Bloke's friend as well. Welcome to the studio. This is just something we were doing last night. We built this, or completed the build of this last night, and then this is the test flight this afternoon. And as William says, great editing skills here. That beep you just heard was a 10-minute timer. I run a timer on all my aircraft because I don't want to run the batteries flat, because it will. If they reach a low enough voltage, all the speed controllers just turn off and the motors stop. And so that beep was a 10-minute warning to me that the batteries are starting to get low. In actual fact, as I say, they went on for about 17 minutes before I got the battery warning light on the copter itself. As you can see now, I am still trimming it, but it's starting to be a bit more stable. Now, mainly at this stage, it was trimming it for drift, left and right, forward and back. It actually kept wanting. it kind of kept wanting to turn left, and drift forward, so do a left-hand curve. And it was interesting, shall we say, keeping it in the air for a while. Editing skill. They've just been banged together. These are lots of short clips. They were taken with a sort of a compact camera. The horrible thing though is the file format these are written to the camera with, my editing software didn't recognise, and I had to convert them to a different file format. And when I did that, the audio track is about 1/4 of a second longer than the video track, which is why you keep seeing the flash.
Almost getting it through, yeah.
Yeah, well, you shouldn't really fly them long enough to do that. So that's why I run the timer, William, because on the quad I can run that for 17 minutes. After 17 minutes, I land it, whether I'm seeing any indication or not that the battery's low. It will be low, and after 18-19 minutes, it will start to sink, and but I land it when I've got enough power. You don't run them. There's absolutely no point in running them as to the last dregs of power. If you want to fly them that long, get a second battery. It's quite tiring actually to fly them this long. The quads batteries do last an awfully long time. That same battery, or a similar battery, you saw the one on the stream last night, the other 850 milliamp hour battery. It lasts 6 minutes in a standard helicopter. In a quad, it's lasting 17 minutes. And my the bigger battery that I showed you, the 2200 milliamp hour battery, in a quad that's lasting 20 minutes or more. In the big helicopter that it also goes in, it's an 8-minute flight maximum. But yeah, incidentally, if anybody has an experience of decent video editing software, up-to-date video editing software, say hello in chat, tell me about it, because what I'm using here was some very good software, but it's now about 5 or 6 years old, and it doesn't support the latest formats and encoders and decoders. And I could mess about with transcoding and things like that, but it probably feels about time to get some new software. So again, if anybody's got any experience of that, let me know. How far are we doing with this? Actually, we're about 10 minutes into the video here, so I don't want to bore everybody, but it's as you can see, still bouncing a bit. Final Cut, that's Adobe, isn't it, free? Final Cut, I think. Or is that? No, I can't remember. Yeah, and I don't have a Mac, but if it's Adobe, there's a similar thing for the PC, but I can't actually remember. I can have a look. And the only trouble with the Adobe software is it's £17 a month. You can't buy it anymore. It's on you have a subscription for it, and the problem is I already have Photoshop, so I can get the whole suite of software for less than I can get the 2 applications, but I don't want to pay that much a month. It wasn't so bad for Photoshop, but £17 a month for the Adobe video editor is a little bit pricey. What I never thought of doing was taking the Gowie quad with me, the big quad, and flying that as just as a comparison for you guys, just to show you the difference. There's next to no wind at all there either. When we get nearer the ground, there's quite a slope on that ground, so when it gets near the ground it does tend to push it off to one side, but up at that sort of height there, it's in stable air. I take your point, Free. I mean, I kind of did it with Photoshop, because that's a piece of software that I'd probably update every year anyway, and it was cheaper to do the monthly fee than it was to update it every year. There we go. So I'll just stop that, because what comes next in that video is just some views of the garden where I was flying it. So there we go. Thank you. I kind of say that's where the new studio is going to be, but it isn't yet. So at this point with the quadcopter, it's there's some niggles. Not fantastically happy, as I say, with the battery mounting. It was sliding about in those flights, and a couple of times it was causing the thing to drift because of the balance was off, and it's not a fantastically stable platform, as you can see. Although it is still being trimmed, but I didn't get the impression that it was stable. I think it's one that's it's gonna need to be flown all the time. And just to show you guys, I was talking about trims. That's these things here, little switches. So when you're flying this, or the way I fly it, is I'm holding the sticks like this, and if I want to then move a trim, I've got to take my thumb basically off the control, and then I'm not grasping it anymore. So for example, I can't move the stick in that direction if I've taken my thumb off it. There are some people that fly with the thumbs like that, and you can't touch the trims at all, or if they fly with the fingers they can, but which is why I land it. Throughout most of that video I was holding this stick over in this sort of direction here to keep it hovering, so it was quite a way off until I started gradually trimming it so that I couldn't let go of this. But that was the effect, and this one I was also holding this over quite a lot of the time. So I land it, and then I could use the trims. But just interesting, just as an interesting fact here, the scope of movement to fly that helicopter was that sort of movement on the sticks. That was enough to do all that, to keep that helicopter in a sort of a stable-ish sort of movement pattern, shall we say. There was no great big movements in there. It was all little tiny movements like that. And of course, with a helicopter, you're doing that with both hands at the same time. I once had it described to me as flying a plane is the same as balancing a broom end on your hand, like that. Flying a helicopter is doing the same thing, but this time you've got four, one on each finger. Ah dear, Bubbles the Monkey, good evening. Saw you pop in earlier, but in full flow, shall we say. No, I don't do that, William. I will stick with legal means. I've done some software development. It's hard work, and if people just go and nick it, then it's not really on, to be honest. It's the same thing as people copying artwork, or people, you've just made some music, somebody's copied it. if Lost has done a mix, somebody's recorded it and said it's theirs. You know, it's the same sort of thing. It's not really a nice thing to do. You know, if the developer wanted to give it away, then it would be open source. And you know, some of the things like the video software codecs cost money. You know, the developers of the software actually have to pay paid license holders. You know, the copyright holders, if you like, or the patent holders in some cases, licenses to use the codecs. And they've got to get that money from selling the software. And if if everybody pirated the software, then the person effectively can't afford to put the codecs in, and the software goes away. So, but there you go. So I encourage everybody. Okay, you know, find a cheaper alternative that'll do the same thing, and if there is open source and you want to use that, go ahead. Open source is just as good as closed source. Yeah, it's down to the programmer or the team of programmers that created it as to how good it is. It's got nothing to do with the actual source status. Okay, well, good evening. Well, you won't be listening to me, but that's okay, Bubbles. And AD Fall Guy, good evening. Did you catch the video, AD? I just showed the video of me flying, well, attempting to test fly the quad. If you didn't, I'll maybe at the end of the stream I'll run it again for anybody that missed it. In the meantime, I'm going to go back to doing some more Scraperboard. Once I've had a couple of days of flying a couple of more attempts at flying the quad, I'll have a better idea whether it's something that's whether I think it's good for me. Other people could think differently. It was hard work, AD Fall Guy. The trim was way off, and I mean a long way off. It was so far off that if I'd have been flying a model plane, I'd have been taking it apart to look for a control that was sticking or something like that, or even resetting the setup of it. Rather than just, a trim is really meant to be just little tiny tweaks, and so I had to work really hard for about 10 minutes to get it to the point where it still wouldn't fly hands off, but I was able to relax a bit more and just give it a chance to see what it could do. But I did, a couple of things I sort of had a niggle about. The battery kept slipping out, and that tended to unbalance it a little bit. And I'm still not convinced that the rotors starting up independently as they do, it actually, I think that's probably contributing to some of the instability that I was seeing. It certainly wouldn't be one I'd recommend for you, for example, to try flying for the first time if you've not had any experience of flying, of being able to fly an actual, helicopter or a quad that you have to actually fly. I don't mean drones, because they kind of just take off and they should be self-trimming, but a bit of work to do it, a lot of work to do it, to be honest. Eventually it flew for about 17 minutes, and to be honest, after I'd kind of had enough after 17 minutes. It was really tiring. So I went and had something to eat at that point, but I was kind of glad the battery was flat. I normally only get that after about after I've sort of flown for about an hour, and during which time I'll have flown four different helicopters. So I tend to do that because they all take different batteries and things like that. So I'll fly a big T-Rex helicopter, which is a helicopter shaped helicopter. Then I'll fly the littler version of it. Then I'll get the quad out. And I'll put a couple of batteries through that, the big quad that is, and by the time I've had sort of 2 flights in each of them, that's a lot of work. And but this one, after just the 17 minutes, it was yeah, put that away for today. Looking a bit bare over this side. So how's this picture looking? It's a bit difficult for me to judge. You guys actually are better judges of how some of this looks. As I come towards the end of the stream, Eddie, I'll run the at least a little bit of the video for you again. I quite like this. This looks quite nice. It's sort of, yeah, you got that shadow effect, which is quite nice. And I suppose what I ought to do is just increase the brightness on one side of the base of this. Just to continue that lighter edge inside. Bit more just down there. Yeah, actually, talking of which, Free, Chris, see what happens. Suggested I put an alien into this. And of course I said, well, I think it's the Predator's already in here, you know, but the Predator's invisible, so, you know, it's there somewhere. But what actually crossed my mind at that point was, what I ought to do is ask you for your reference picture, and if you minded me doing it, for the xenomorph, and see if I could do a xenomorph in this, you know, do a similar picture but as a scraperboard. And see how it came out. That kind of might be an interesting challenge. Just to see how it looks. But yeah, it's it kind of makes me want to do an airbrush one as well. And I'm still utterly amazed how a few scratches are turning into something that looks like this. Thank you, Eddie, about that. That's great. Okay, I'll tell you what then. That's the next scraperboard. That's after I do the carving and after I've done the next pyrography, because I seem to be doing these things in sequence. I'll have a go at doing that. Now what I've got to do is I've got to live up to your standard, though, don't I, of reproduction. Okay, is that some sort of fancy fancy drawing on the sign that you're doing, or are you just cheating and using it as a spray gun? Because I kind of do that occasionally. I don't know. There's a heck of a lot of sort of texture and technique into that fray. It's not, I know we both have that sort of, it's not very good, and I should be able to do better. But it's, it is good. It is good, and it will be a challenge to keep to that sort of level of work. It's a good thing to practice on anyway, AD. All things like that. If you practice airbrushing techniques while you're doing it, even if ultimately all you're doing is either using a stencil or you're using you were just painting it all one colour, using the right techniques will it's something to practice with. So all I'm doing here now is just doing really light scratches just all over. What I want to do is just raise the brightness of the whole piece a little bit. The moon's surface in the reference pictures is a very light grey, and this is actually a bit dark. I kind of want it to be a little bit lighter. So it is totally random scratches, just all over the place. Particularly irritating when you want to fill in just one little space. Like I got a large area of black down here, and I could not get a scratch in the right place. But we're having a visitor. He's currently sat to one side here behind my monitor, and he's watching what's going on. But feel free to say hello to Junior, and yeah, no, it says the content's currently unavailable, or the link may have expired. Yeah, I do as well. That's the best way. That's the way I find best to learn anything. Actually, free is I find it hard to learn things in abstract. I mean, there's lots of stuff. I'll be reading. I don't know. I'll be reading a bit about space travel or something, and I will learn some stuff because it's describing things to you, but that's sort of knowing about it as opposed to learning. And it isn't until I've actually got something to do that I actually learn. Same with programming, building models or anything like that. If I've got an actual objective in, then I'll learn how to do it, and I and enjoy doing it and things like that. It's like the Scraperboard, until I had an image in mind with the portrait, and this obviously the Earthrise. It's really hard to work out how to do it. Yeah, he's actually got. he was about. I think he was about to, but what he's gone and done now is my computer's actually to the right hand side of my desk. It's on the outside of the desk, and it's got. Whilst it's got exhaust fans in the roof, the temperature control, so they're switched off at the moment. It being a water-cooled PC, there's not a lot of heat in the case, and both cats love to lay full length on that because they get a bit of heat rising out of it on the stomachs, and they both of them in individual times they'll just lay full length out on there. It's quite cute, really. Noxil, good evening, welcome to the stream. Oh, that's not bad. AD Fall Guy, that's not bad at all. If you think about, you've sort of started to think about it, but think about the order in which things are from background to foreground. You might find it a bit easier to paint things, but it looks like you're starting to do that already. It's just the tent cover looks a bit odd. You probably should have done some of your background behind that so you could paint the tent cover over the top. And a tip for clouds, cotton wool, or I'm sure 3D can think of something else, but take something like cotton wool and tease it out, make it quite thin and spray through that, and that will give you a nice cloud effect. Yeah, you've used a shield or something for the tent build, looks of it. Even 3 couldn't do a line that straight. But yeah, it's a nice looking image. Do some of that on stream, and you'll soon be you'll soon be in competition with 3D there. Cuddly toy stuffing, yeah. It's that sort of fluffy sort of material, isn't it? That makes a really good way of doing it. They're not bad. They're not bad at all. If you mask, and the people who are good. Good thing to mask, if you like, from that point of view, the outline of them. When you cut your mask, keep both parts. So one of the best things airbrushing wise for masking is something, well, I've just got a roll of it here, but it's something like Ultra Mask. I can't quite get it on stream, but Ultra Mask. It's like a see-through plastic, but it's really low tack. You can do it with tape and things like that, but they work better. Well, actually, it won't be so bad on the thing that you're doing. I do a lot on paper, so I've got to be careful not to rip paper. But anything low tack transfer tape. There are some low tack painter's tapes that you can do it with, because I'm imagining you're going onto wood there. You've just got to be careful not to rip your paint off that's already on. but put it on and then cut your mask. And then you can take your person out of the middle of it, and you can paint your person. But you can then once it's dry, you can put it back and take the mask around the outside off, and then you don't overpaint what you've already done. You can then paint around them and tidy up the edges. And it's a great way just to, because you want really sharp edges on something like, or reasonably sharp edges, shall I say. You probably want to go on over afterwards and blur them slightly so that it doesn't look masked. But that works really well for doing that sort of thing. Yeah. The stuffing. Yeah. Yeah, application tape. Yeah, that's the vinyl application tape. It's used for sticking things down, like vinyl signs and stuff like that. I've got a roll of that around somewhere. Given that I've got a plotter, a cutter, it seemed like a good idea. Yeah, Friskett's the same thing. Frisket, Ultra Mask, same sort of idea. The application tape, it's there for a different purpose, but again it's the same idea. One thing about application tape is it does tend to be quite corrugated. Is kind of a corrugated texture, and you've got to make sure you get the edges smoothed down if you do that. Same with some of the tapes. Otherwise paint can get under the edges. Yeah. Yeah, it's probably the same one. I guess the one of the Graphtec machines, the Craft Robo or something like that. I guess free. That's what mine is. I'm almost betting yours is the same, unless you bought one of the Chinese copies. And I've got some vinyl to cut as well, and I just never have. Yeah, curved edges. You can pull it as well. So one of the nice things with the Frisket or the Ultramask, you can pull it around curved surfaces as well. So if you were doing something like a petrol tank on a bike, you can pull it around there. Although on metal you can use tape just as easily, as long as you make sure your paint's bonded properly. One thing I'm finding certainly with this tool, is I have to hold it really upright to get it to scratch really fine lines. Kind of obvious in a way if you come over on one side, because the blade sort of is starting to sit flat, but it's noticeably that I've got to really hold it straight up. Yeah, the Silhouette's the newer version, I think, of it. Mine's with mine, you need to get different blade carriers for different depths and things like that. I think with the Silhouette, you've got you can dial the blade depth into, which is a lot better. Yeah, I've never played with the Velocity. Lots of people have said they're nice brushes, but I've never had a Badger, so most of my brushes are Iwatas. It's mainly a case of I've got used to them, I guess. And I quite like the Iwatas I've got. Two of them are trigger style as opposed to where was it? There we go. So that's a standard airbrush style. That's an Iwata Eclipse. It's a entry level airbrush, entry-ish level airbrush. It's not the entry level, but it's at the low end. And then what I'm actually enjoying using quite a bit, or enjoyed using quite a bit, are these, which are they're still a dual action airbrush. So you've still got air and then paint. It's not a single action, but of course it's trigger operated. And one of the things I find after using an airbrush, like all day, for example, is I start to get aches in my finger from controlling it, whereas with the trigger it's somehow it's a lot more natural. So I'm quite enjoying this, and this being a side feed, it's got advantages as well, that I can stick a big bottle on the end of it. Just like you can with yours free. Only yours is bottom fed, but you then have a side feed cup that goes into it. But I quite enjoy these. These are sort of mid-range in the Iwata style, and I like the balance of them, and this one especially as well are nice. But my really nice brush is Harder and Steinbeck, or Steinbeck, not quite sure how you pronounce it. Knocking things off here. She's that little beauty. You can tell I've held it so long I've started to discolour the chrome there. But that it's got a needle cover on at the moment to protect it, because you're on about your brushes free. That's an exposed tip, and you won't be able to see. Actually, you can just see the edge of the needle there against the black. Let's see if I can just catch the reflections there. That's a 0.15mm nozzle, which is damn tiny, and it makes me nervous putting the cap back on it free in case I catch it. Yeah, I do airbrushing, Knoxhill. Not for the moment, because I don't have sufficient space to stream it, and where I would do is behind me, and of course everything's in front of me here. The screens are. So if I was airbrush, I can do what Free does, turning backwards and forwards, but it just wouldn't be really comfortable. So the intention later this year, maybe when we get to around Christmas, is that I will potentially do some airbrushing as well. Sit it somehow into the sequence of doing things, and because then I'll have a bigger studio and I'll be able to lay things out a lot better. You did a whole bedroom wall with that velocity. You are a masochist, aren't you? Yeah, I sort of kind of do that myself. Free. They're amazing things to look at. I think there's some real weird looking ones. Grex make a real weird looking one. I forgot what it's called now. It's supposed to be a really decent brush, but it's purple and got weird bits hanging off of it. Kalani. Look up the Kalani. It's a real funny looking brush. Would you mind not knocking cameras off, Junior? Thank you. Yeah, they do look. It does look gorgeous, doesn't it? They with the red cover, the H&S. You know, I've kept thinking about, oh, that's not bad. I think you're missing a tyre, but that's not bad. I'm guessing it's not finished at this point, but into the picture, but I like that. That's good. Yeah, real good there. I've got the door to the room that I've got, which is over there. One side of it is painted the same colour as the walls I've got here, and the number of times I've stared at the back of that door and thinking, what could I put on there? Yeah. Actually, the Grecs make a really nice entry-level brush as well. Their entry-level brush is supposed to be a real nice brush. Uh, 10-minute warning free. And as I was saying earlier, once this is finished, the next thing is going to be doing a carving on this block of wood. I think this block of wood. It's about 1 inch thick, so we'll be going down about 3/4 of an inch in relief carving. If anybody's got any particular ideas of what they think might look good as a relief carving, so it's not going to be a 3D thing. This is like a wall plaque with the image standing out from it. Then feel free to mention it in stream, and you know, I may well, if it sounds like an idea that I like and that I think I can do, then you might get to see your idea come to life. Yeah, but as I said, getting a new studio later this year, and then you know. Oh, of course, sorry, you're right, thank you. Oh, well, there you go then. I don't have to hurry up and finish mine. I only got my brush to do my computer. At some point I'll take the side off it so you can see it's sort of meant to represent an aquarium, if you like, or a tropical fish tank. It's a water-cooled PC after all. I have thought about taking an image with a hose stuffed in the back, you know, and put it on one of the water cooler forums, and saying something along the lines of, I've made my water-cooled PC, but it doesn't start up too well. Has anybody got any ideas? Yeah, I kind of feel sort of like the same myself. I'd love to do it, but actually one of the things I intend to do when I move studios, which is commensurate with moving house. Yeah, probably it's either that or it's the whale that's in there as well, the killer whale. Is I intend to, because I like making models, I intend to make myself an N-scale model railway, and one of the things I want to do is paint the backdrop of that. So that'll be, you know, it's a smaller wall. It'll be about a 18-inch, 2-foot high wall, but at least I'm going to get a bit of practice doing a wall before I do some of the big ones. that's starting to brighten up a little bit. Need to do a little bit more on the features. I think it still looks a little bit contrived. They don't quite look like real Luda features, not to my view anyway. I'm a little bit thinking maybe I should have planned some of them to start with so that I'd be able to actually use curved lines, because of course the first pass on this was all just straight random lines. Let's just try something. We've got odd I'm just trying a larger blade, just so that we get some sort of wider lines and thicker lines, because there's when you look at the reference image, there's kind of lots of dotted highlights all around the place. I wonder why. Because it kind of strikes me as what's the difference really. I mean, okay, because the chroma key overlays these days are so damn good that you can't actually tell them apart from actual filmed backdrops. It sort of strikes me as other than, I guess, do the actors react differently when they've got a real backdrop behind them? It also suggests you're going to have somewhat more limited backdrop locations. Great for the backdrop artists, I guess, but oh, okay. It seems a bit odd though, because didn't he want to do more CG in it, but just couldn't because it was too expensive, and that's why, you know, they went to the hand painted stuff, or even, you know, to the real locations, just because it was cheaper. I've not heard anything about the new films anyway. So who's the new robot character free? Well, if anybody's watching and wonders what on earth this is Scraperboard. you'll see a lot of it in craft and hobby stores. Generally speaking, though, it comes with a pattern pre-printed on it, which then they give you instructions as how to scrape it off, and you end up with a picture of a cat or a lion or a horse, which seem to be the most prevalent ones, as was being discussed earlier. But this is plain, completely black, no printing on it at all, Scraperboard. And now this is my second. The first one was a portrait of John Miles on stage, done from scratch, never before done anything like that before. This one was done totally freehand so far. Well, I say totally freehand. I did use a jar of paint to make sure I got the earth circular, so I drew around it. But that's the only little bit of assistance I got with this. So complete heresy, you see there. Really, it's copying, and it's computer art, and it's all done for you, isn't it? Because I used a paint to help me, a pot of paint to help me do that. But it's Scraperboard, so what it is it's china clay on top of a thick paper backing, which is rolled flat and cured, and then there's black Indian ink, which is then rolled over the top. All I'm doing is using sharp tools to remove some of that ink, and so the picture you're seeing and the shading that you're seeing is done by scraping lines, either thicker lines or thinner lines close together, to create the illusion that you're looking at. Okay. Oh well, ball balancing isn't that difficult these days for some of the robots. Yeah, there is. Actually, it's not much different to the helicopter I was flying. It's just gyros, which measure when they move and balance things back again. But yeah, it really is clever tech. Don't know how they're moving it. If it's a ball, they'll be moving it by moving a weight inside. There's a robot that you can buy, which is ball shaped, which you can steer by remote control. And it's got a camera in it, so it's meant for security applications. Or the one that they showed was, for some reason, a parent sending this ball down to the park to tell the kids to come home. Yeah. But well, never going to happen. But yeah. So, has anybody ideas for carving? Come on, we've got, if Chris, if he's still around, we've got 3D Bloke, who's an artist, we've got AD Fall Guy, who does chainmail and airbrushing, and William in there that does 3D modelling, and unfortunately Noxel, I can't remember if you do anything, but we've got a whole raft of creative guys and gals in here. Bubbles the Monkey with her bead art. Let's have some ideas, because I haven't got any. Until you do, of course, your crocheting. I'm being lazy, you see. I've no idea. I can't think of anything at the moment. If I'd suggested a sleeping pussycat, but kind of doing a lot of pussycats these days. And I did a rose last time, so Would you risk doing something gaming related? Yeah. I don't particularly have a problem doing something gaming related. Depends on what it is. I've not, as I said, my experience of carving is not a great deal, but that's, as I said earlier, well, you know, learn by doing. So it's as risky as doing anything else, to be honest, Free. Unless, of course, you think I'm going to get inundated by people going, that looks nothing like, from the game world. And of course, I know now one of you is going to do precisely that, aren't you? Whatever I do. I don't mind. Yeah, trouble is you kind of have to watch the watch the games to see something like that, and it really wants to be, you know, probably one of the I was going to say probably something like one of the World of Warcraft or something like that. We said, which I suppose you could always do a gun or something like that. Yeah. Well, of course. I mean, I did stream the other day. I did was last Saturday and Sunday. I was streaming Microsoft, not Microsoft, in Train Simulator, doing a train, Class 66 locomotive, and there is one in the game. Well, there is if you buy the download. So definitely gaming content. I just wasn't playing the game, but I had an interesting. It was with. Had an interesting discussion with Baby Tears, who very kindly reminded me that I might have been streaming in the wrong section. And of course it was, yeah, I'm in the train simulator section. This is a train. It's simulating a real one, and it's 2015. Why am I in the wrong section? And I was having a bit of fun like that. And... But yeah, it proved in. I mean, interestingly, a lot of people sort of came. I didn't get any of that comment actually. Yeah, Free. But there was quite a few people came in and were interested in what I was doing. Or rather, you know, if they did report me, nobody's mentioned it. But with gaming content, it's a case of finding something you like. I mean, actually, daft as it sounds, I was kind of half thinking about whether I could do something like Minecraft related. You know, I don't know. Pick Steve and a creeper or something, you know, coming up and do that sort of thing in sort of semi-relief. Yeah, I mean, a dragon. Interesting thing is that I think of dragons. Anne McCaffrey is an author who did a series of a whole series of books. There's a lot of them. 20. I'm going to say 20 or 30 books. I don't actually know how many. I do have most of them. It's a world called Pern, where they're friendly dragons, shall we say. The dragons and the humans. Well, the dragons are genetically engineered, and they communicate telepathically with their rider. I find the storyline a fascinating one, and they're friendly dragons, and I'd kind of love to be able to do something like that, but I can't actually draw dragons. And I kind of feel like maybe, you know, I suppose it would be stealing an idea off a book cover, but that sort of makes me uncomfortable, because it literally would be sort of stealing the idea, because I can't draw them, and I need to practice a lot before I could sort of take the book covers as an inspiration to do my own version of a dragon, but yeah. The one thing about Minecraft as well is that they've had for quite a long time. There's 2 or 3 artists. Artillery 82, I think. JB Drawing. He's been in there for a long time now, and he actually has done a lot of images for a lot of the big streamers, the Forgecraft guys mainly, but others as well. Character drawings and things like that, which they're using as as part of their streaming media as well. So and there's another young artist that does cartoon style work. I've forgotten her name now. She's now nearly always in there as well. So they're kind of used to it in there. Silis, don't know that one, but yeah. There's which book? 80 Fall Guy. There's a whole stream of them. The one that I read first and probably enjoy most, partly because it's some of them are more. Are you sure that's the one? Yeah. The one that I enjoy most was the White Dragon. Ruth the White Dragon, but the book's called The White Dragon, I think. And it's science fiction. In the others are more sort of science fiction, as in they're on a planet, they came from Earth, they know they came from somewhere else, but it's there's dragons and they're fighting a menace, and the dragons, the fire breathing dragons, and there's a lot of stories around that, you could call them folklore stories. But the White Dragon, they discover an AI computer that the original settlers had, and eventually got abandoned for reasons that are explained in the story. And the AI helps them to eliminate the menace that they're fighting, and they do that by learning technology. They visit the starships that they arrived in because they're still in orbit, and they learn a lot about the history. And I found that book, that was the first one I actually read of the Pern series, and then I have all the rest. But I also like the other Anne McCaffrey books. There's a books on the Tower and the Hive series. They're about humans with telepathy and telekinesis, and they're shooting packages about the universe. And then there's some about shell people, as they're called, but they're people who basically drive starships around the place. There's somebody doing a 3D model of that dragon, don't you, Free? They've been doing it in clay modelling. It's a woman that's doing it. I can't recall the name, to be honest, but she tends to be on every night. I'm sure you've seen her. Baby Tears, good evening. Welcome to the studio. Nice to see you again. You've not been I was about to say you've not been around for a few days. Okay, fair enough. That's good thinking, Fee. You can't have people walking out on the stream. That's no good. The numbers will go down. How else you've been around? You've probably got bored on the last three streams then, watching me build a helicopter. I think it was it William yesterday that suggested, of course, that they definitely did fake the moon landings, and the director that was faking it wanted it to be so realistic that they had to do it on location, and the only location that they could really think of to do it, to fake it really accurately, was the moon. Indeed, there's no flies around either, and I take it you're not wearing headset either, Baby Tears. And of course, you mentioned pyro tools, pyro machine. So maybe not quite what you thought there. I tell you what, if this is good enough to fool people, at least enough to think it got anything to do with a fake moon landing, my job is done. That's good enough for me. Dear, that kind of would be a really nice outcome if somebody said, "Look, it has to be fake. There's an artist that could do it." Dear, that would be an absolutely fantastic thing to happen. Are you sure about that? You're right, it is, but I tell you what then, at some point in the next few streams where you're watching Baby Tears, I will randomly turn it on and off. And of course I shall rely on you to accurately tell me when that's happened. Because one of the other things you won't have known is I'm going to be hanging from the ceiling, but you might notice there's something missing, apart from the fact I want to comb my hair. You might notice there's sort of something not there, even though I am hanging from the ceiling, not dropped off, just not there. And I have a great big cable around my desk, specifically designed not to pick up hum, because I got myself a microphone. That's what that is. Just in case you can't recognise a microphone. So I've got myself a decent microphone, a proper XLR cable, and a decent converter box. So I don't have that cable around to pick up noise, and I've got a fully shielded microphone and things. So. That's true. So I like that. But of course, some of the Honda stuff is if you've seen they've created a robot it's going to work in some Japanese stores as an information robot demonstration, I guess. But it's supposed to, and it does look extremely realistic. So there you go. Good evening, Cannon Bear. How to draw a dragon, even. Yeah, a dragon. That sounds like something out of Harry Potter. Does a dragon? Yeah. I tried. That's literally. That's one of the first things I tried to do with my airbrush. I'd done lots of dots and lines and crosses and dagger strokes, and whilst I had some random colours in the airbrush it was a piece of wallpaper I was using, I tried dragons. Yeah, no. I need to practice. 3D paint. Zara. Sorry, baby tears, that one's gone over my head. Oh, you've missed some stuff then, baby tears. I'll let 3D tell you. Ah, dear. I can get even more realistic than that though, Cannon Bear. Yeah. Take tool, turn to 11, touch to paper. That's really realistic fire. Sorry, baby, I'm just reading your comment. It's kind of like when I made it work, and it just reminded me of that. I can't remember what I was talking about, but dear. That's alright, I'll keep the hum away for now. Ah dear. That's how much sort of ink we escape off just looking at my fingers on these gloves. I'm going to end up having, well, I was about to say going to end up having to replace them soon, but they don't have to be white. They're just cotton gloves. I guess the worst that I'm going to do is rub the black into the white and darken it down a bit, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. That one I hadn't thought of, Baby Tears, but you're right, yes. I think it's a mix of both, Camembert. I think what you get is quite literally, if every artist you saw was literally doing the same thing, then it's kind of like, you've got nothing really that distinguishes you from anyone else to make them want to stay. They actually have to come in and listen to the chat and maybe what it's about. But I think to start with, people tend to do things like just look through the images that you see when you just drop into creative and go, well, that looks interesting, or sort of, not another dragon, or not another image of an anime girl with a short skirt or something like that, and it's kind of, I mean, I look through and go, who's actually doing something physical, whether they're modelling, crocheting or whatever it is, and I look for those. And a lot of the artists which are just doing electronic art, I'll just skip over, but some of them are damn good, No, that's the sharp spoon, is that one? You want the dull spoon? That's the dull spoon. Dear. Art Attack. Oh, I remember back before Art Attack, what was it? With Tony Hart. And they had the wall with the paintings on. Oh, I forgot what it's called now. Just about everywhere on creative these days at the moment, Baby Tears. Stripey Tees, good evening. Welcome to the studio. Nice to see you, and I assume you agree with me that something unusual like this attracted you to come to the stream, and I'm glad it did. Thank you very much. No, the last one I saw was cat. They were cats, I think, or meant to be cats, so they had tails rather than tentacles. Neither are my, Baby Tears. Take Heart. That's the one, Free. He was another phenomenal artist, really. Oh, that's what I remember from back there. The thing I kind of remember though is I always remember that music. I can't actually remember that music, but that music was always accompanied the gallery where they showed all the pictures, and as soon as I hear it, I'd recognise it, and that would be the image that came to mind. It's always kind of been synonymous with art, and art from in quotes normal people. Yeah, no E. That's right. No drugs involved at all, Free. Well, Stripey Tree, in case you didn't know, despite the title saying Scraperboard, this is what Scraperboard is. This is blank when I started a while ago. It's card on the back with china clay that's been spread over it and rolled flat, and then it's coated in black Indian ink. And just to avoid confusion, I bought it. I didn't make it. And then what I've done is this is an almost totally freehand drawing image created using just sharp tools. The only non-freehand bit was I used a paint pot to get a circular earth. If I hadn't, I know I'd have done a reasonable circle, but it'd have been slightly off, and I'd have got a bigger and a bigger and a bigger one until eventually I'd have found something that was circular. So I thought I might as well do that to start with. Now E3D is a company that make nozzles for 3D printers. You think that emote looks like what? You'll have to play it on your stream one day, Free, and I'd kind of love to. There's a lot of music like that I can remember from my childhood. There was a kids drama series which was Robinson Crusoe, and the start and end music of that, I can remember that one. It always strikes me as being my wife is busy humming it to herself at the side here, and I'd love to find that one. It always evokes in me sort of the desert island or the beach with nobody on it. And that Tony Hart with the music as well, and it just defines my childhood, I guess. Tony Hart. No, it isn't, but that's another one where when he did the gallery, there's a piece of music that was always done. It always, Oh, okay. No, taking drugs never a good idea unless it's for true medical purposes. Okay, so it is, yeah. That actually reminds me, Toki, just mentioning drugs there. I saw a video from Aaron Rutten, who's an artist who does stuff on YouTube. He's a painter master for Coral. Talking about whether or not drugs is a good thing for artists to take. It was on about marijuana actually, because I think in the state he's in, it's actually legal, and that was a bit of a weird thing. And he sort of came out in favour of doing it, but not to my mind. Anyway, I have actually been reminded of something. I've been reminded of the fact that I've not had any tea. It's 10:30 in the UK, at night that is, not in the morning, and so that means it's time I had said tea. Now I did promise AD Fall Guy before I finish I'd just play a bit of that video again. Of me attempting to trim out the model helicopter we built on stream the past 3 nights. So I hope Aid is still around. I'll just play just a few minutes of it, not all of it, because it's about 17 minutes long, but I'll just play a bit for Adi. And yeah, there you go. So this is the very first flight, AD, and bear in mind that I am working really hard at this point, trying to keep that stable. and I stopped it and moved it there because it was going into a place I didn't, too close to all the things that would have damaged it. I'm trying to hold that in one place and hold it stable. And it's taking a heck of a lot of effort to do that, and it's way off trim. So as you can see, and just to think, I originally bought that for my wife to fly, and I can't hardly fly it. Yeah, well, the other quad you saw on the stream the other night, Teddy, the big one. That one, the big one's a lot more stable, and I find that a lot more fun to fly. And of course, if you fly the drones these days, they're a lot more stable than even those. But okay. It goes on like that, and for about the next 10 minutes until I actually manage to get it to the stage of reasonably trimmed, and I'm doing a little bit less work, but it's still hard work, and it's needs a lot more work on it at the moment. But I'll so it's getting there, but yeah. And it turns over a couple of times. You hear me say finally. I managed to get some trim on it that meant I was not having to hold the controls off centre most of the time. Anyway, I could play that. I could leave that for the next 15 minutes, but I suspect that might prove to be a little bit boring. So yeah, it's not one I'd recommend, AD, to start with if you're not flown before. But as I mentioned, tea time, and time I had a bit of a cool down. It's a bit warm in here now. So I'm going to do my usual advert, of course, which is, if you've enjoyed what you've seen today, please feel free to follow me. That way, when Twitch deigns to tell you, if you follow me, then hopefully you'll know when I go live. If you don't trust Twitch, as many people don't, then you can also follow me on Twitter. That's Arrogant Art, but the details are below the stream window. That way, hopefully Twitter will be more reliable. If you just want to take a chance to drop in, then I generally will be on stream from about 8 PM in the UK each night. And wherever you are now, to pinch a line from 3D Bloke there, that's about 2.5 hours ago. 2 hours and 40 minutes ago. So count backwards, 2 hours 40 minutes, that's about generally when I go live. In the meantime, I want to thank anybody who has come into the stream this evening to watch. Thank you. It's been absolutely fantastic having you around and chatting. And I hope I shall see you in tomorrow night's stream, where we may just well get on to doing some carving, depending on whether I decide this is finished or not. But we're getting there. So thank you, everybody. Nice to see you in the studio. See you tomorrow.